LoveLore Library. Chapter 843. After all, Peng Yuan was still afraid of the emperor. To be honest, Shuangxi was quite surprised that she didn't see any impatience on Nanny Zhu's face. She had always thought that the servants of the Empress Dowager were usually very arrogant and domineering, while Nanny Zhu gave people the impression that she was a kind elder. If it were someone else, she would have already flown into a rage after hearing what Nanny Zhu said. She would have been accused of being arrogant and spoiled. But Nanny Zhu obviously didn't give her such a feeling. Instead, she stood there with a good temper and said, "In that case, you and I will wait a little longer." It just so happens that Imperial Consort Pang is also with the Empress Dowager. With Imperial Consort Pang accompanying the Empress Dowager won't be anxious. "Nanny Zhu, I would like to ask you a question." Nanny Zhu smiled. "Miss Shuangxi, if you have any questions, please ask." "There's no need to ask me. Does the Empress Dowager have a lot of prejudice against my miss?" "Oh." The smile on Nanny Zhu's face deepened. "Miss Shuangxi, why do you say so? Why do you say so?" "On the way to the Dark North Kingdom with my miss, Imperial Consort Pang once joined hands with the people from the Dark Poisonous cult to kill my Mississippi. The white-haired granny is a close friend of the Empress Dowager for many years, so the Empress Dowager must have known about this. Calm. This question had always been a doubt in Shuangxi's heart. She really couldn't figure it out and was afraid that if she asked her miss too much, the miss would tell her about it. This time, when she saw Nanny Zhu, perhaps because Nanny Zhu was easy to talk to, she asked without thinking. Nanny Zhu was stunned at first, as if she didn't expect that this little servant girl would be so bold as to even dare to ask about the matters between the masters. However, after being stunned for a while, she did not show any displeasure on her face. Instead, she said honestly, "Miss Shuangxi, this is a matter between the master and the son. Moreover, Grand Tutor Pang is a loyal minister who protects the country. When the late emperor was alive, he was the sworn brother of the late emperor. After the late emperor's death, the royal palace of the North Underworld can be so peaceful. For many years, the Empress Dowager and the emperor have sat firmly on the throne of the North Underworld. Among them, the most indispensable thing is Grand Tutor Pang's loyal support. Grand Preceptor Pang's beloved woman passed away early to save the Empress Dowager. Concubine Pang was Grand Preceptor Pang's only daughter, so the Empress Dowager had always owed the Pang family something. When Concubine Pang was born, the Empress Dowager used this debt on Concubine Pang. Ever since she was young, Imperial Concubine Pang has been doted on by everyone. In this harem, no one dares to disrespect Imperial Concubine Pang. At this point, she looked at Shuangxi and sighed. No matter how much Imperial Consort Pang has gone overboard, no matter how many innocent women she has killed in the harem, no matter if the Empress Dowager knows about it or not, she will not do anything to her. The harem is a place full of intrigue. Everyone has their own plans, and everyone is looking out for themselves. The Empress Dowager was experienced and knew this very well. As for your miss, the Empress Dowager really likes Miss Shen. Before Miss Shen came to the Northern Underworld, the Empress Dowager had already told me about this. Otherwise, when Miss Shen was in danger, the Empress Dowager would not have persuaded the white-haired granny to help. Just from this point, it is enough to see that the Empress Dowager values the white-haired granny. Miss Double Happiness, on one hand, is Imperial Concubine Pang, whom the Empress Dowager has watched grow up. She has always felt indebted to her, so the Empress Dowager has always been tolerant of her. On the other hand, if you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yuta Literature on WeChat chatting about life and looking for a bosom friend. Chapter 844. Miss Shen is the woman that His Majesty has taken a fancy to. The Empress Dowager is also an experienced person in the matters of relationships between men and women. Back then, she and the late Emperor were a couple that everyone in the northern underworld envied. To the Empress Dowager, the throne and the country are important, but nothing is more comfortable than two people who love each other hand in hand for a lifetime. Behind them, there is no longer that lonely dragon throne. Therefore, the Empress Dowager would also take a liking to someone that the Emperor liked. Because the Empress Dowager knows that the Emperor's eyes are not bad. Since the Emperor has taken a liking to your young miss, then your young miss must have something special about her. As for Imperial Consort Pang, I think the Empress Dowager will also be in a difficult position. The only thing she can do is to watch Imperial Consort Pang do something behind her back, trying to hurt your Mississippi. White-haired granny has been staying in the shadows of Zhenyang Palace to protect your young Mississippi. I believe that with white-haired granny here, your young miss will be fine. Although the Empress Dowager had said so much, Shuangxi could tell that the Empress Dowager had always favored Pang Yuan. After all, the Empress Dowager had watched Pang Yuan grow up and recognized her as her daughter-in-law since she was a child. However, her family's young miss was personally favored by the Emperor, so he was forced to accept her family's young miss, not for anything else, but for his son. Now that she thought about it, Double Happiness could not help but rejoice that her young miss's actions were right. If young miss was really like the other women in the Dark North Harem, and went to greet the Empress Dowager as soon as she arrived in the Dark North Harem, the Empress Dowager might not even treat her young miss differently. While Double Happiness and Nanny Zhu were talking outside, Nanny Zhu the Emperor and Shen Yueji finished eating and came out. Seeing them, the two of them hurriedly bowed. Riding on the same dragon carriage as the Emperor. One could imagine how many envious gazes he had attracted along the way. By the time they arrived at Ci and Palace, it was already past noon. The Empress Dowager did not seem to get impatient after waiting for a long time. Huaxin Originals, domain names, please remember new by Chinese website Peng Yuan, on the other hand, had been waiting for a long time, but Shen Yueji still hadn't come. Peng Yuan had started to get impatient. During this period, she had naturally said many bad things about Shen Yueji. Basically, Shen Yueji didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and was arrogant because of the favor. She knew that she was summoned by the Empress Dowager, but she still made all sorts of excuses and dawdled. Previously, it was already disrespectful to the Empress Dowager by not paying her respects in advance. But now, it was even more disrespectful. Xian sat beside her and listened to her complaints quietly. He did not speak or interrupt. In the end, it was Pang Yuan who was tired of talking. Seeing that the Empress Dowager had no intention of paying attention to her, she cursed the damned old woman in her heart. She slowly became well-behaved and stopped talking. The Emperor has arrived. A voice came from outside the hall. Xian's eyes widened slightly. Pang Yuan, on the other hand, immediately stood up straight and looked outside excitedly. She touched her face and hurriedly tidied up her clothes and makeup. Brother Emperor is here. Her voice couldn't hide her excitement and joy. She probably hadn't expected that her brother, the Emperor, would actually come over at this time, and that she'd even come face to face with him. All of her previous displeasure vanished like smoke in thin air. She turned her head to look at Xiao who was behind her. Xiao quick, look. Is my makeup messed up? If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find confidence. Chapter 845. Xiao also replied in a flattered tone, replying to your ladyship has a graceful bearing. Without any makeup, you are as beautiful as a fairy. No woman in this world can compare to you. I believe that when the emperor sees your ladyship, he will be very happy. Pang Yuan's heart bloomed with joy. After tidying up her clothes, she was about to kneel on the ground and greet the man who came in from outside. Xian glanced at her overjoyed expression and shook her head. Her son had not come to see her in Xi'an Palace for several days. She knew better than anyone why he came today. It was something that even an old woman like her could understand, but Wan was a fool. Did she really think that Shang came to Xi'an Palace for her? Shang didn't have her in his heart. She had seen it a long time ago, but she always thought that although Shang didn't have Wan in his heart, at least he didn't have anyone else. At least in his heart, the only woman who was worthy of him was Pang Yuan. Now that there was Shen Yueji, she shook her head and sighed. Pang Yuan would never have that possibility. Sure enough, when Pang Yuan raised her head, she saw not only the man she had been thinking about, but also a beautiful woman standing beside him. He held the woman's waist, and when his cold eyes looked at her, they were filled with infinite tenderness and pampering. She had never seen such a loving and pampering gaze from him in her life. It was as if, in his eyes, no matter how prosperous the world was, no matter how broad his vision was, it couldn't compare to the woman in front of him. For some reason, the smile on Pang Yuan's face suddenly froze on her face. She looked at the scene in front of her. Tears swirled in her eyes. She knew that her brother, the emperor, liked this bitch very much. For this bitch, he had sacrificed a lot. It seemed that he was not afraid of offending the emperor of Feng country. Moreover, on the night this woman came to the northern underworld, her brother, the emperor, had already pampered her. In the past, she had thought that her elder brother, the emperor, was indifferent like an idler, aloof and untainted by worldly affairs. Only now did she know that her elder brother, the emperor, was also a mortal. When faced with the woman he liked, he would also be so indulgent and careful. This time, Pang Yuan once again had a new understanding of the man she loved. Why? Why wasn't such a gentle and affectionate brother emperor hers? Why wasn't his expression as affectionate as water used on her? Why? She couldn't understand. She couldn't understand the man whom she had loved for so many years. She couldn't understand how the man whom she had waited for so long, silently and willingly, actually appeared in front of her with another woman in his arms. It was such an eyesore. Now that she had thought it through, all the enthusiasm and joy just now was like a bucket of cold water, pouring down from the top of her head, pouring her warm body completely cold. Was he worried about Shen Yueji coming here alone? Or was he afraid that the Empress Dowager would make things difficult for her, so he personally accompanied her here, put down everything in the court, put down all the memorials in the imperial study? Even when she went to see him, she was rejected by Eunuch Liu. He said that he was dealing with the memorials and that he didn't have time. Yes, the emperor of a country had to deal with the court. As the concubines, they should be considerate and understanding, not. Read the latest chapter of Explosively Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent Gets into Trouble with Claw Book House, for free. Chapter 846. Pang Yuan's heart ached at the thought of this. Why? Why could she, Shen Yueji, do it? Why couldn't she? Did Shen Yueji love Brother Emperor as much as she did? Did she know Brother Emperor as long as she did? She had stayed by Brother Emperor's side for so many years without complaint or regret. She was just a third party who had ruined her relationship with Brother Emperor. Brother Emperor belonged to her. Brother Emperor belonged to her. She was so sad that she wanted to suffocate. She wanted to cry, but she didn't dare to. She could only watch as the man, who was as noble as a god, slowly walked in her direction. Her gaze was so hot that it felt like a ball of fire when it landed on him. On the mobile /m. After his gaze left that woman, it returned to its usual indifference. No matter how hot her gaze was, he didn't even look at her. She clenched her fists under her long sleeves. Pang Yuan didn't kneel again. Instead, she ran towards that indifferent figure. A sweet smile once again appeared on her face. She opened her arms, wanting to protect him. Brother Emperor, Wan hasn't seen you for a long time. Wan really misses you. Did Brother Emperor miss Wan? As the beautiful figure dashed towards them, the crowd was stunned. Shin Yueji narrowed her eyes. She felt the man's aura decrease. The cold air in the hall also decreased rapidly. Pang Yuan didn't seem to notice. She still had a sweet smile on her face as she rushed towards Mo Wushang. She was about to fall into the man's arms. Mo Wushang held her by the waist and leaned against her. Just like that, the beautiful woman easily missed and fell to the ground. Not only was she in a sorry state, even the skin on her delicate palm was broken because she fell hard on the ground. Pang Yuan's eyes turned red from the pain. She had never been treated like this since she was a spoiled child. She fell to the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. Seeing this, Xiao hurried forward to help her up. Your Highness, are you all right? When she saw that Empress Dowager's palm was bleeding, she shouted anxiously, Empress Dowager, her ladyship's palm is bleeding. Empress Dowager, look, her ladyship's hand is bleeding. His Majesty. His Majesty, on the computer, how could Xian not see the blood on Pang Yuan's palm? She narrowed her eyes and glanced at the blood on Pang Yuan's palm with a pained expression. She hurriedly got down from her high seat and quickly walked in front of Pang Yuan. She glared at the side where the clouds and wind were blowing. Emperor, Wan is still your Gui Fei, how can you treat her like this? If the Empress Dowager really wants to talk about this matter, why don't we talk about the conspiracy between her and the dark poison cult? It seemed like a very ordinary sentence, but in reality, the invisible threat in it was extremely obvious. The expression on the Empress Dowager's face tightened. Even Pang Yuan paused for a moment and did not cry out in pain. She gritted her teeth and glared viciously at the silent woman behind her brother, the Emperor, with a hint of viciousness in her eyes. She acted as if she did not see the sorry state she was in. To be precise, she had a panoramic view of the entire Ci and palace. From then on, she became a bystander, and this was her plaything in the midst of all the excitement. She should be happy, but in her heart, she must be mocking and mocking her. She was like a pathetic loser. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, she would like to follow Yudu literature. Chapter 847. She, on the other hand, had a panoramic view of her sorry state. Just because. Brother Emperor liked her, and Brother Emperor loved her. She didn't have to do anything, and Brother Emperor would settle everything for her. First published on the new Bai Chinese website, the more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged. Before Shin Yueji was with her, Pang Yuan had never known what it was like. But after Shin Yueji was with her, she finally understood what it was like. It was so uncomfortable, as if she was about to suffocate. She had never understood that the first person to be with Brother Emperor was her, and the first person to accompany Brother Emperor was also her. And Shin Yueji was just a latecomer. She didn't know Brother Emperor as early as she did, didn't have a good background and status, and wasn't as beautiful as her. How could Shin Yueji compare to her? She looked at Shin Yueji with eyes filled with hatred. The depths of her eyes seemed to be tainted with poison. It was so venomous, so ruthless. If a person's gaze could kill, Shin Yueji would have already been dismembered by 5 horses. Shin Yueji naturally felt this intense hatred as well. She curled her lips into a faint mocking smile. She really didn't need to say anything. She only glanced at her indifferently. She had never taken this woman seriously, whether it was on the way to the northern underworld, or the six-headed snake woman she met at the inn. Even if that woman wanted to die with her, to her, death was death, and there was nothing to be afraid of. She still didn't take her seriously. After coming to the northern underworld, when she really saw her, she also looked down on her even more. To her, other than a good background, a beautiful face, this woman really had nothing good to marry. For example, Shin Yueji used to only rely on the love and indulgence of her family to be lawless. However, Shin Yueji was much better than her. At the very least, Shin Yueji was straightforward and showed all her dissatisfaction on her face. However, Shin Yueji was different. The thoughts and schemes in her heart were too vicious and vicious. It was hard to like her from the bottom of their hearts. The fastest update on the website on the computer, she didn't reflect on what she had done, but put all the blame and sin on others, as if she had been wronged. Such a person, Shin Yueji smiled slightly. She felt that it was dirty to her eyes. The Empress Dowager saw that her palm was fine, or maybe it was because of the Emperor's ruthless words. She sat back on the high seat and looked at the woman who was protected by the man. She was indeed beautiful. She was different from those women who only had beautiful faces. There was a calm aura around her, as if she was not involved in the matter. If it was another woman who saw that the Emperor was so protective of her, she would probably be gloating over her misfortune. Even if she was present, she did not dare to be too obvious. At the very least, there should be some complacent expression on her face and in her eyes. However, this woman did not. From start to finish, she gave off an indifferent aura. She really didn't take this matter to heart. To be exact, she didn't take Pang Yuan seriously at all. Whether she made a fool of herself or not, it had nothing to do with her. Seeing this, Xian suddenly felt that this woman was indeed different from other women. To be honest, just this point alone made her quite likable. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, the regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find a bosom friend. Chapter 848. She didn't wait for Shin Yueji to speak and said, "You're the woman from Feng Country, right?" Shin Yueji waited for the Empress Dowager to speak to her before kneeling down to pay her respects. First published on the website. Calm. Who knew that before she could kneel down, the man beside her grabbed her hand and said, "There's no need to kneel." Shin Yueji was speechless. Actually, kneeling wasn't a big deal. Putting aside the fact that she was the Empress Dowager of Dark North Kingdom, she was Imo Wushang's mother and her future mother-in-law, so she should kneel. Can think, the man so pampered her, fell in the eyes of Pang Yuan, the hatred is more up a level. However, the Empress Dowager squinted her eyes. No emotions could be seen in her deep eyes. Forget it. Since the Emperor loves you so much, he will feel heartache if you kneel down. On the other hand, I don't know how he will blame me. Shin Yueji, right? Yes. I won't bicker with you about you coming to the Northern Underworld Kingdom. However, I know a little about the private matter between you and the Emperor of the Feng Nation. Tell me, why did you give up the Emperor's favor and come to Dark North Kingdom's harem? That's right. Hearing the Empress Dowager's question, Peng Yuan climbed up from the ground and walked to the Empress Dowager's side. She supported her and said, "Shin Yueji, tell the Empress Dowager why you came to Dark North Kingdom. Although Brother Emperor was bewitched by you, the Empress Dowager and I aren't fools. You are the Emperor's favorite concubine. Why did you come all the way to Dark North Kingdom's harem? What's your purpose? You better tell me the truth. Otherwise, the Empress Dowager will make sure that you won't be able to return." Xian was slightly unhappy with Pang Yuan's arrogant tone, especially in front of Mo Wushang. Wasn't she trying to sow discord between her and Shang Er? However, Shen Yueji's expression was the same as when she came. Not only was there no change in her expression, there wasn't even a hint of panic. As for the handsome man beside her, he took her hand and led her to a seat at the side. Shen Yueji's expression was neither servile nor overbearing. She looked at Xian's not-so-serious face and smiled slightly. Empress Dowager, in Feng Country, when I first saw the Emperor, I fell in love with him at first sight. However, the Emperor never took me seriously. In a fit of anger, I entered the palace to test how important I am in the Emperor's heart. The Emperor of the Feng nation and I are only the Emperor's favorite concubine in name. Actually, nothing happened between me and him. Humph, you're talking nonsense. Since you're both concubines, there's no way there's such a pure relationship between the two of you. Shen Yueji, don't lie. Do you think the Empress Dowager will believe you? Whether he is innocent or not, the Empress Dowager will know once she asks the Emperor. Xian really didn't know about this. A woman's chastity was important, but as long as Shang Er liked it, it wasn't worth mentioning to Xian. She knew that Mo Wushang pampered Shen Yueji on the day she came to the northern underworld, but she didn't think about it. Mo Wushang's handsome face gradually turned cold after hearing Pang Yuan's provocative words. His cold eyes glanced at her indifferently. Didn't Ji Er already tell you whether I am innocent or not? Could it be that you want me to say it again in person? Brother Emperor. How is that possible? When Shen Yueji told her, she didn't believe it at all. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yuda Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 849. To be honest, they didn't really believe it. However, after hearing what her brother said, although he didn't explain it on purpose, it was enough to prove to them that Shen Yueji was a virgin. Even if she was the Feng country's emperor's favorite concubine, the Feng country's emperor had never touched her. Didn't that prove her purpose for coming to Dark North? And it was swept clean just like that. Was it because she liked her brother, the emperor? No. She must not let them all think so. If she did, she was afraid father and big brother have written to me. I believe that before long, father and mother will also come to the Dark North Kingdom to serve the Dark North Kingdom. If the Empress Dowager thinks that I have ulterior motives for getting close to the Emperor, then if father and big brother come to the Dark North Kingdom and become loyal officials, will the Empress Dowager still think so? What did you say? Xian suddenly stood up. He couldn't hide the joy in his voice. Even his gaze towards Shen Yueji had a hint of joy. Although Shen He was a first-rank general of Feng country, she had heard of his name even though she was far away in Dark North. Shen He had been an official for so many years, and he had made countless contributions to the Feng kingdom. Not only was he outstanding in battle, but he was also able to fight 10,000 people alone on the battlefield. Pang Yuan smiled coldly. Empress Dowager, don't be happy too early. What if the Shen family and the Feng country's emperor came to an agreement and came to our northern Dark Kingdom with an ulterior motive? They are working together to harm our northern Dark Kingdom. Empress Dowager, don't forget that there were many spies from Feng country in our court. It's hard to protect ourselves. This Shen family is also part of the same plan. The Shen family has been loyal officials of Feng country for 100 years. Not only are they loyal to Feng country, they even shed blood for the Feng country's emperor. How could they rely on Dark North just because of Shen Yueji? Pang Yuan's words were not unreasonable. Seeing Xian fall silent again very quickly, Pang Yuan's words made sense. Before this, Feng country and Non-Yue's emperor worked together to fight against Dark North. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this. After the sound of cold air being sucked in, there was a strange silence. The website was updated the fastest. On the computer, Shen Yueji stood up and looked directly at Pang Yuan, who was 3 steps away from her. The Southern Mountain, the Northern Dark Star, and the Phoenix Kingdom are the 3 most powerful countries in the world. When I was in the Phoenix Kingdom, I heard from Hong Fui that there were many rebels in the Northern Dark Star court. In order to deal with these rebels, the court was short of many talents. The Phoenix Kingdom and the Southern Mountain knew about this, so they wanted to take this opportunity to attack the Northern Dark Star and take it down. Does Imperial Consort Pang know about this? She was a woman in the harem, how would she know? However, it did not mean that the Empress Dowager did not know. Previously, Mo Wushang had indeed been busy with this matter, and she had also received some news from the Imperial Study. If the Foam Kingdom and Southern Mountain joined hands, it would definitely be disadvantageous to the North Sea Kingdom. They would not be able to resist at all. After all, they had lost too many useful talents to deal with the rebels. If the Foam Kingdom and Southern Mountain joined hands at this time, the North Sea Kingdom would be destroyed. As for why there was no movement from the Foam Kingdom and Southern Mountain, first, domain name, please remember Shen Yueji saw that Pang Yuan had nothing to say, so she smiled and continued, at that time, Hong Fui told me that the North Sea Kingdom still had the strength to fight back. There was an evil sect in the North Sea Kingdom called the Xianming sect. They wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble. Talk about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 850. The Xianming sect has no lack of martial artists. If the emperors of the Foam Nation and the Southern Mountain really join hands to attack the North Sea and the Xianming sect will be able to resist them just as well. She smiled and said, this Xianming sect's holy daughter has been my close friend for many years. She's even not afraid of death for me. If I really wanted to harm Dark North, I wouldn't have helped Dark North and killed the envoy sent by Southern Mountain behind Feng Juqing's back. I wouldn't have needed to come to Dark North either. At that time, wouldn't it have been easier for Xianming sect and Southern Mountain of the Feng Nation to work together? Pang Yuan was rendered completely speechless by his words. That was right. Shen Yueji's words were not unfounded. Just by looking at the Empress Dowager's expression, it was enough to prove that what she said was true, and the Empress Dowager was also aware of these things. Her words were enough to prove that she did not have any ulterior motives in coming to the Northern Underworld. She had indeed come for her brother, the Emperor. For her brother, she had not hesitated to marry far away, had not hesitated to break off relations with the Emperor of the Foam country, and had not hesitated to bear the infamy of being a traitorous witch who was scolded by the citizens of the Foam country. He even brought his family over. Shen He's high position and outstanding achievements on the battlefield. No matter where he went, his reputation would be resounding. With these proofs, not to mention Shen Yueji being the concubine of the North Underworld, even if she became the queen of the North Underworld, all the rumors would stop because of this, because she is the fastest to update on the internet. Mobile/M. She had saved their Northern Underworld from a crisis. When their Northern Underworld was about to be robbed and killed, it was Shen Yueji who had saved them. The reason why they were safe and sound until now was also because she, Shen Yueji, was helping them. Shen Yueji, on the other hand, quietly accepted their schemes and their curses. She never explained or expressed her position. In their eyes, wasn't this the kind and virtuous empress they hoped for and needed? New by Chinese website. Pang Yuan felt sour. A ball of fire had gathered in her heart, but she couldn't say anything. She had no way to vent her anger. Her brother, the Emperor, was present. She knew that what she had said just now had angered him, and he was already unhappy. If she continued to be unreasonable at this time, her brother, the Emperor, would probably hate her even more and settle old and new debts together. Not only would the Empress Dowager not be able to protect her, even her father would not be able to protect her. Your Highness, Xiaoer saw that her face was frighteningly pale. Afraid that she would fall, she quickly supported her. Pang Yuan's face was deathly pale. Empress Dowager, Brother Emperor, Wan suddenly feels unwell. I want to go back and rest. She had thought that after she had said these words, her brother, the Emperor, would look at her tenderly and summon an imperial physician for her. She did not expect him to be able to warm her up, but at the very least, he would look at her tenderly. But from beginning to end, her brother Emperor didn't even look at her. She clenched her fists in grief. Only the Empress Dowager glanced at her indifferently. That glance did not have the usual care and tenderness. She said indifferently, since you feel unwell, go back and rest. Xiaoer, look after your Highness. Yes, Empress Dowager. There were tears in her eyes. Pang Yuan gritted her teeth and held them back. She looked back 3 times with every step. In her eyes, her brother, the Emperor, was so tall and handsome, as beautiful as an immortal. He was like a 9th heaven immortal who did not eat the food of the world. But such a perfect man did not belong to her. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu Literature. Chapter 851. She had always thought that Brother Emperor was hers. One day, he would become her man, so she was willing to wait. No matter how many years she had to wait, as long as Brother Emperor could look at her once more, as long as Brother Emperor was willing to love her, she was willing to wait until her hair turned white. But now, he looked at Shin Yueji with a gaze that she couldn't be jealous of or envious of. That's right, she had the gaze that she longed for, but it didn't belong to her. Shin Yueji. She gritted her teeth in hatred. So what if you have Brother Emperor's liking? So what if Empress Dowager protects you? Even if your parents come to Feng country, even if you get close to Brother Emperor because you really love him and want to be with him, so what? Brother Emperor is mine. He used to be, is still, and will always be mine. One day, I will let Brother Emperor know who truly loves him and who is loyal to him in this world. It's me, not you. The woman who is qualified to stand by Brother Emperor's side is me, not you. In this world, only I am worthy of Brother Emperor. After Pang Yuan left, Mo Wushang held Shin Yueji's hand and stood up. Seeing that they were about to leave, Xian's eyes widened. Where are you going? We've already seen each other. Is going back to rest. Mo Wushang didn't look at her. Instead, he gently hugged the little woman in his arms. The fastest update on the internet on the computer, Xian was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Emperor, do you still care about your mother? If I don't, why would I bring her to see you? Xian sneered. You didn't bring her to see me. You're obviously afraid that I'll do something bad to her, so you're guarding against me. The man didn't bother to explain. He just stood there, silently answering her suspicions. It was accurate. Xian didn't believe that she wasn't angry. However, when she saw Shin Yueji's pretty little face, she was no longer angry. This future daughter-in-law was really pretty. Just this little face alone was enough to make a person of her age like her like a lotus flower. The more she looked at it, the more she liked it. With Nanny Zhu's help, she stood up and walked towards Shin Yueji. Your Shin Yueji was stunned by the Empress Dowager's baffling confirmation. Didn't she just ask this? After talking for so long, she still didn't recognize him. Zhu Mama covered her mouth and snickered, Miss Shin, don't mind it. Just now, Consort Pang was present, so the Empress Dowager didn't dare to be too obvious. After all, the Pang family had worked hard and made great contributions. Shin Yueji had more or less heard of Grand Tutor Pang's name. It was not easy for the Empress Dowager to side with Pang Yuan on the surface and help her behind her back. Even the words she questioned her just now must have been said deliberately in front of Pang Yuan. As a result, it would be too embarrassing to leave Pang Yuan alone here. Look, you've just come to the Dark North Kingdom, and I don't even know what treasures I should give you. I bet you're already used to these things. Nanny Zhu, quick, take out the box I put inside. Yes, Empress Dowager. Before long, Nanny Zhu came out with a red box in her arms. She looked surprised. She didn't expect that the Empress Dowager would give such a precious thing to Shin Yueji. After all, it was left by the late emperor for the Empress Dowager. The fastest update on the internet if you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu Literature, on WeChat, talk about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 852. Even Mo Wuxiang was stunned when he saw the box in Granny Zhu's hands. This jade bracelet was given to me by the late emperor when he was still alive. Since he passed away, I've been reluctant to wear it. I miss him every day, so I took it out to have a look. There's a pair in total, and I'll give you one. In this way, we can call each other sisters. Shin Yueji. Even the white-haired granny, who had the best relationship with the Empress Dowager, didn't have this kind of treatment. Nanny Zhu watched Xian take a Rui jade Rui very naturally. She took Shin Yueji's hand and forced her to put it on. Xian looked at the fair and tender little arms in front of him and really liked them very much. When I was young, I had a pair of hands just like hers, fair and clean. I don't know how beautiful they were. Unfortunately, I'm old now, so old that only the skin is left. But this jade bracelet looks really good on your wrist. It's like it was made for you. Shin Yueji awkwardly pulled her hand back and wanted to take off the jade bracelet. The feeling of wearing this jade bracelet was indeed incomparable to that of ordinary precious bracelets. Just by wearing it on the wrist, if one didn't think about it carefully, one would think that there was no bracelet on the wrist at all. Moreover, from the expressions of the people present, it seemed that this thing was very precious to the Empress Dowager. If so, it was even more difficult for her to accept it. After all, she wasn't the kind of person who liked jewelry. Moreover, she was not used to wearing these things on her hands. It would feel awkward. Even if she brought it back, she would put it aside. After a long time, she forgot about it. Mo Wuxiang saw that she had the intention to take it off, so he held her hand. Since it's a gift from Mother, just accept it. If you don't like it, you can take it off when you go back. Nanny Zhu was speechless. Your Majesty, in front of the Empress Dowager, you really hurt the Empress Dowager's heart. Yes, if you don't like it, you can take it off when you go back. Anyway, this jade bracelet is a good treasure. It's priceless. It can't be exchanged for several cities. She used to like Pang Yuan so much, but she didn't give this jade bracelet to her. Now, she just met Shin Yueji once, and she couldn't wait to give it to her as a gift. One could only imagine how much she liked Shin Yueji. Shin Yueji was pulled into a passionate conversation by the Empress Dowager. Shin Yueji listened by the side and was undoubtedly curious about how she and Mo Wuxiang got to know each other and how they got together. Then, in front of Mo Wuxiang, she started bad-mouthing him, saying how good she was as a mother-in-law, and that he should treat her well instead of Mo Wuxiang. The fastest network update mobile/m. com/Shin Yueji was amused. In the end, the man couldn't stand it anymore and pulled her away. On the way back to Xingyang Palace, Shin Yueji was held in the man's arms and yawned. Tired. Seeing her reaction, the man couldn't help but hold her tightly. Shin Yueji nodded in his arms. It's all right. I just didn't expect the Empress Dowager to be so enthusiastic. Looking at the glowing red jade rui on his wrist, he thought to himself, what's so good about this bracelet? Why did your expressions change one by one when the Empress Dowager gave it to me just now? The man kissed her forehead lovingly and said, this is a token of love that my father gave to my mother when he was alive. If you wear it, you will be immune to all poisons and live longer. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find a confidant. Chapter 853. Is that so? Shin Yueji's eyes widened in shock. Just being immune to poison was enough to see how precious it was. How could the Empress Dowager give such a precious thing to her? This jade rui was given to my mother by my father. What my mother loves is not its immunity to poison and longevity, but my father. Every time I miss my father, I take it out to have a look, but I'm never willing to wear it on my hand, for fear of spoiling it. Looking closely, the surface of the jade rui was very smooth and translucent. It was obvious that it had been cleaned frequently. The network was updated the fastest. Mobile/M. Seeing this, Shin Yueji felt a touch of sympathy for the Empress Dowager of the North Underworld. Speaking of which, your mother is really pitiful. Your father loves her so much, why, speaking of this, she closed her mouth. The affairs of the royal family had always been like this. Feelings could not overcome some. Thinking of this, she looked at Imo Wushang, and her dark eyes flashed. You won't die early and leave me a widow, will you? The man was stunned at first, then stared at her for a while and laughed. Do you want me to die so much? Of course not. If you die, I will be a widow. In this world, which woman is willing to let herself be a widow? Don't worry, as long as you don't leave me, I will never die. Even if it's for you, I will live. I will accompany you to see the prosperity of the world. Shin Yueji's heart moved, and she hugged his neck. Actually, your mother is quite good. Well, she has always been good. She never forces people, nor does she use her power to oppress people. She will not hold back for the person she likes. But she has only seen me once. Why does she like me so much? Mo Wushang stared at her for a while, and suddenly smiled, probably because you are good-looking. Me? Good-looking? Shin Yueji's mouth twitched. Speaking of good looks, Xian's good looks alone. She was still beautiful even when she was old. When she was young, she was a great beauty that could cause the downfall of a city and a state. This was true good looks, wasn't it? New August Chinese website. What's more, there was no lack of beauties in Dark North's harem. She should have seen many beauties of all shapes and sizes. If beauty could move her, then Pang Yuan could move her too, right? She smiled. Don't say these words to coax me. In my opinion, the Empress Dowager clearly loves me because you like me, so she also likes me. The man chuckled. Of course. After all, her future grandson can only rely on you. Shin Yueji, her pretty face blushed unconsciously, almost instantly reminding her of the way he treated her that night. She grabbed the man's collar tightly. Mo Wushang, I think we need to set a rule. When it comes to sex, we can't be unrestrained. Right now, you need to focus on the court, not with me. The man's thin lips ambiguously approached her. For the royal family to reproduce the next generation, it is important to spread branches and leaves. Other people at my age will have grandchildren in a few years. Shin Yueji, this kind of thing needs more practice. Skill makes perfect. After a while, will be able to accept this feeling. No. I can't accept it. Unknowingly, they had arrived at the main hall of Xingyang Palace. The man directly carried her all the way to the bed, put her on the bed, leaned over and kissed her. Shen Yueji was shocked. Just as she was about to resist, her clothes were untied by him. All her resistance at this moment was lost, and she could only be at his mercy. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, talk about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 854. And Palace. I didn't expect the Empress Dowager to like Miss Shen so much that she even gave her such a precious Rui jade. Everyone in the harem knew about the Rui jade, especially Nanny Zhu. It was a token of love given by the Emperor to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager was reluctant to wear it, so she treasured it very much. When she missed the late Emperor, she took it out and wiped it. And wiped the last Rui jade. I just wanted him to see that our Shang-er finally met a woman he loved, just like when we were young. And smiled with relief. When he just left, he was always reluctant to leave us. He was worried that we would be bullied by others and could not die in peace. There were tears in Cin's eyes. For so many years, except for the time when the man died, she had been crying. Sometimes she thought that she should just follow him, but she still had Shang-er. She knew she couldn't do that. If she really followed him, what would happen to Shang-er? He was the only descendant of Dark North. She had to support him to grow up. She couldn't be so selfish. Nanny Zhu, why did time pass so fast? I always felt that I was still young. But yesterday, when I was combing my hair, I found that the black hair on my head had turned white. Even my face had a lot of wrinkles. And him. The scene last night seemed to be vivid in front of me. But when I thought about it carefully, I found that he had passed away for many years. I'm afraid that the pile of white bones had merged with the earth. There were tears in Cin's eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached out to wipe her tears. She had said that she would not cry. That man often said to her that in this world, everyone will die, but sooner or later. He said that he didn't leave. He just went to a place without people, a lonely place. He would watch her from afar and protect her and her son, who hadn't been young when they were young. Especially when she saw Shang-er and Shen Yueji, they were very similar to her when they were young. First published on the new Bai Chinese website, especially Shen Yueji, this woman's temperament was very similar to his. Granny Zhu, although I feel sorry for I have watched her grow up. Just because of her relationship with the Pang family and how much she has sacrificed for the Dark North Kingdom, I want her to become the queen of the Dark North Kingdom and stay with Shang-er for the rest of her life. Although her methods are vicious, I know that her feelings for Shang-er are real. As long as Shang-er can look at her, she will do anything Shang-er asks her to do. However, what's the use of me liking her? She shook her head and sighed. Shang-er is Ai's only son and Biming's only descendant. Ai has to think for him. Because of her, that man had sacrificed his harem of 3,000 beauties. She was the only one left, and she was the only one who bore his child. In a royal family, having no descendants was the most important thing. How could she let the beautiful land of the Northern Kingdom be destroyed in her hands? How could she let him be ashamed to face his father and the other members of the royal family of the Northern Kingdom? Sometimes, it was really a kind of pain to reminisce about the past. Speaking of which, it had been so long, at least a few decades. Cian had almost forgotten all the crazy things she did when she was young. Even her past with that man had been mostly forgotten. The fastest update on the internet if she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat followed, Yudu literature. Chat about life and find a bosom friend. Chapter 855. But every time she thought about it, in addition to being nostalgic, she felt more heartache. The handsome and gentle man in her memory seemed to be as gentle as the wind only when he spoke to her. She still remembered it until now. She and he had promised to accompany each other until they grew old and never leave each other for the rest of their lives, but he had left her early. Xian gently wiped the jade rui scepter in her hand and asked, Nanny Zhu, am I really old? Nanny Zhu knew that she was thinking about the past again. She also knew that after serving the Empress Dowager for so many years, the Empress Dowager seemed to be carefree and concerned about everyone on the surface. Only when no one was around, the Empress Dowager would show her sadness and helplessness in front of her. She didn't know why, but Nanny Zhu inexplicably felt sad in her heart. She had served the Empress Dowager for so many years. She had been by her side since the Empress Dowager was married. She had witnessed how the Empress Dowager got to where she was and what she had experienced with the late emperor. She had also been moved and shed tears. She knew that the Empress Dowager was sad again. She smiled and said in a gentle tone, What are you talking about, Empress Dowager? No matter how old you are, you still look beautiful and young, just like a little girl. How can you say that you are old? But I am really old. Xian turned to look at her and smiled. Look. She pointed at herself in the mirror and said, When I smile, there are so many wrinkles on my face. I don't know if he will think I am ugly when he sees me in the future. Empress Dowager, Nanny Zhu knelt on the ground with distress and put her hands on Empress Dowager's legs. After hearing Empress Dowager's words, Nanny Zhu's eyes turned red. Empress Dowager, don't take it too hard. Have you forgotten what you promised the late emperor and what you promised me? You said that you would live well, and His Majesty. You also promised His Majesty, you said that you would raise the young prince well, you said that you would live well. When the late emperor passed away, the person in the world who was the most heartbroken and miserable was none other than the Empress Dowager. Nanny Zhu didn't even dare to think back. After the Empress Dowager heard the news of the late emperor's death, she started crying and throwing a tantrum, but in the end, she gradually became quiet. She didn't say a word and didn't pay attention to anyone. She seemed to be dead, or like a walking corpse. The death of a person was not scary, but the death of a heart was. That was the feeling the Empress Dowager gave her at that time. She was really afraid that the Empress Dowager would really take things too hard. She also knew that the late emperor and she were deeply in love. In this world, there was no one who could be more affectionate than them. The two of them treated each other as their own lives and truly loved each other. Even if she did not love them as passionately as they did, she knew that if one of them left, the other would be in so much pain that he would want to die. Feelings were hard to come by for the members of the royal family, especially since the heart of an emperor was fickle. However, the late emperor's feelings for the Empress Dowager had never changed. What was more, even the blooming flowers of brocade couldn't compare to the Empress Dowager's beautiful smile. When he was alive, what I remember most clearly was that I would often ask him, "Don't treat me so well. I'm afraid that I really can't leave you. If I don't have you, how am I supposed to live?" Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent Gets into Trouble with Claw Bookstore for free. Chapter 856. But he always said that treating me well has become a habit. He told me that even if something bad happens to him one day, I must live well. He said that as time passes, I will forget everything, including him, because he said that time is really a very good thing. It can make me forget everything. No matter how much I love him, as time passes, I will forget him completely. But Xian finally couldn't hold back her tears anymore. It dripped down her cheeks, boiling hot like water, and dripped onto her palms from her cheeks. She finally wanted to cry out loud. After enduring for so many years and being strong for so many years, this time, she finally couldn't hold it in any longer. In fact, she had never forgotten. Although that man had passed away more than 20 years ago, and although she had forced herself not to think about him and forget all the little things that happened between them. But her feelings for him and her longing for him had never been forgotten. She had never dared to forget. Seeing that Shang had a woman he loved, seeing the loving young couple, it was as if she saw the shadow of herself and him through them. Xian covered her mouth and hugged the only remaining Rui jade in her arms. Do you see? Our child, our Shang, has finally grown up. I didn't let you down. I didn't let you down. The empire of the North Underworld is protected. I left the only descendant of the North Underworld for you. I did it. In the past, she thought that she couldn't do it. But all these years, she finally gritted her teeth and endured it. She did it. She really did it. Nanny Zhu looked at her with heartache. She knew that although she looked bright and beautiful, her heart was already full of holes. Perhaps from the moment the late emperor passed away, the Empress Dowager's heart also followed the late emperor. She also firmly believed that if it weren't for the emperor, the Empress Dowager wouldn't have been able to live until now. Empress Dowager, you have to hold on. Soon, you will have a grandson. Look at how loving His Majesty and Miss Shen are. I believe that good news will come soon. Empress Dowager, now, you should live for yourself. Don't surround yourself in the darkness without light. I believe that the spirit of the late emperor in heaven also can't bear to see you like this. If the late emperor knew that you wash your face with tears every night, he would be so sad. Mobile/M. Com/ Xingyang Palace, May concubine has arrived. Shen Yueji had just woken up from her afternoon nap when she heard a sharp voice coming from outside. Her hand holding the teacup paused. Mei Fei Nyang. This name sounded strangely familiar. For a moment, Shen Yueji couldn't remember who this woman was. Your Highness, have you forgotten? Today in the Imperial Garden, didn't the servant beside the woman who was beaten by Wu Jiaoyi say with a trembling voice that this May concubine is her concubine's master? Oh. After Double Happiness's reminder, Shen Yueji seemed to understand a little. She nodded and said, so it's her. No wonder she sounded so familiar. However, she had never met her before. Why would she come looking for her without any rhyme or reason? New by Chinese website, or was it because of what happened in the Imperial Garden today? Shen Yueji's lips curled up into a smile. If that's the case, then let her in. Although she said she was here to report to Sheng Wanmei, without her permission, no matter how arrogant Sheng Wanmei was, she would not be able to enter as she pleased. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yuda Literature on WeChat chatting about life and looking for a bosom friend. Chapter 857. Shuang Shi respectfully accepted the order and went out to let her go. When Shen Yueji saw Sheng Wanmei, she was still a little surprised. She was surprised that she had not only heard of her name in the Imperial Garden, but she had also heard of her in the back palace. When the servants in the back palace had nothing to do, they liked to gossip. Sheng Wanmei had been gossiped about a few times in front of her. She was said to be well-educated and reasonable, beautiful and tactful, kind and amiable. Not only was her father a first-rank prime minister in the imperial court, she wasn't like imperial concubine Pang, who was spoiled and arrogant, cruel and merciless. Instead, she treated her servants very well, especially those servants in her chambers. She treated them like her own sisters. All the servants in the back palace hoped that they could have such a good master. One could imagine that Shangguan Mei's reputation in the palace had always been top-notch. Even the palace maids and servants who talked about the empress in private had the guts to talk about her in public. If Shangguan Mei became the empress, then the Brimming's back palace would have accumulated several generations of good karma. Shangguan Mei was only wearing a light yellow dress today. She had a voluptuous figure and was not fat. She had a perfect figure and a face that was as beautiful as a lotus flower. She was so beautiful that one couldn't take their eyes off her just by looking at her. The moment Shuang Shi saw her, he was completely stunned. It was as if she couldn't believe that there was such a beautiful woman in this world. After all, in her eyes, her mistress's appearance was already one of the best in the world. But after seeing Shangguan Mei, Shuang Shi realized that there was always someone better than her. She didn't mean that her mistress wasn't beautiful enough and couldn't compare to her in terms of beauty. In terms of beauty, she always stood on the side of her mistress. But in terms of figure, she stood on the side of Shangguan Mei. She really had a devilish figure that was mesmerizing. Looking at her, then looking at herself, Shuang Shi finally understood what the difference was. She paid attention to maintaining her appearance every day. If she had a figure like Shangguan Mei's, she would probably wake up laughing even in her dreams. Shangguan Mei looked at the woman in front of her and was slightly surprised. She had thought that the person the emperor had brought back was a kind and tactful woman. However, after these few days, she had seen her behavior in the back palace. Although she hadn't come to see her, she was always monitoring her every move. Any reaction on her side naturally couldn't escape her discerning eyes. New by Chinese website, it was said that she was carefree and didn't care about anything, and the feeling she gave him now was the same. She could see through Pang Yuan's thoughts with just a glance. However, Shangguan Mei realized that she couldn't see through the woman in front of her no matter how hard she tried. Her gaze was almost glued to her, even though, however, she was still unable to see through the woman in front of her. Very quickly, she suppressed the astonishment in her heart and smiled slightly. Young Lady Shen is indeed like the rumors in the inner palace. Not to mention that you are devastatingly beautiful. Just this simple and elegant temperament is enough to make Ben Gong feel ashamed of my inferiority. Mei Fei Nyang is too kind. In this world, who can be truly elegant and not care about worldly affairs? The so-called carefree and elegant temperament is just that one has seen through some things. Mobile phone /m. com/o. Shangguan Mei raised her eyebrows. I don't know what young lady Shen means by this. Ben Gong is untalented and would like to seek advice from young lady Shen. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 858. If Imperial Concubine Mei wants to ask for advice, then it would be too much for me. To really talk about asking for advice, Imperial Concubine Mei is an old person in this palace. In these years, you must have experienced a lot of things. If you really want to talk about asking for advice, then it should be me asking Imperial Concubine Mei. These words made Shangguan Mei unable to restrain her laughter. She covered her lips and laughed softly. Miss Shen is really different from her. To speak the truth, I hope Miss Shen will not be angry. Previously, this consort had always thought that the reason you were able to gain the emperor's favor was only because of your devastatingly beautiful face. Now, this consort doesn't think so. Which woman in the imperial harem doesn't want to gain the emperor's favor? Which woman in the imperial harem doesn't want to show off after obtaining the emperor's favor? They are afraid that others won't be able to see that you are able to gain the emperor's favor. Shen Yueji smiled faintly and sat on a chair at the side. Even if the person in front of her was the second-grade Mei concubine of the Northern Sea, and her current identity was only that of a woman raised by the emperor in the palace, without any title. But she could rely on the emperor's favor and love for her to be so arrogant and not put any of the concubines in her eyes. Shangguan Mei was not like Pang Yuan. Seeing her like this, she would be filled with hatred. On the contrary, there was no displeasure on her face. Instead, she treated Shen Yueji with a bit of admiration and respect. According to the emperor's current love for Miss Shen, I believe that before long, Miss Shen will be conferred as the Empress of the Northern Dark Kingdom. Miss Shen has done so much for the Northern Dark Kingdom. I believe that even the ministers in the court will not have any complaints if they know that Miss Shen is thinking of the Northern Dark Kingdom. Mei Feinyang will not come to find me for no reason today. To be frank, I am not familiar with Mei Feinyang. The ministers of the Northern Underworld, how they treat this concubine is their own business. What Mei Feinyang is thinking, what you want to say, you might as well say it directly. Why do you need to beat around the bush? Moreover, I've always disliked interacting with people who beat around the bush. Miss Shen is a straightforward person. Since that's the case, Ben Gong will say everything. As she said this, she glanced at Double Happiness behind Shen Yueji and hesitated slightly. Double Happiness came to the Northern Underworld with me from Feng Country, and she is also a servant girl who grew up with me. We are as close as sisters, so why can't Imperial Concubine Mate say it? After all, everyone has different thoughts. The people of this world are all selfish. This Empress is also thinking for Miss Shen. At this point, Shangguan Mei paused and looked at Shen Lian. Based on Miss Shen's intelligence and wisdom, you should have guessed what Bun Gong wanted to say. Shen Yueji only found it funny and nodded, I do. Concubine Mei came to find me for two things. The first is the matter of Wu Jiaoyi in the Imperial Garden, and the second is the matter of Concubine Pang. According to the current situation, adding on what Concubine Mei said, you came here to make friends with me. Since I protected Wu Jiaoyi and allowed her to kill people, you didn't get angry. From this, it can be seen that you didn't come here for this matter. Then I deduced that since it isn't Wu Jiaoyi, it must be Concubine Pang. Chapter 859. Shangguan Mei showed an admiring expression. That's right, I did come for Imperial Consort Pang. To be precise, I came for you, Miss Shen. First, domain name, please remember. These words made Shen Yueji a little puzzled. She looked at her with a smile in her eyes. Please forgive my stupidity. I don't understand the meaning of Imperial Consort Mei's words. What do you mean by coming for me? Imperial Consort Pang is a vicious person. She relied on the fact that her father made great contributions to the Dark North Kingdom and was a loyal official of the Dark North Kingdom. He was like a brother to the late emperor and was highly regarded by the Empress Dowager. Even Pang Yuan was fostered by the Empress Dowager as her own daughter since she was a child. In these years in the palace, Pang Yuan relied on her birth and powerful background to kill countless innocent women in the harem. On the other hand, the Empress Dowager and the Emperor mostly covered up for her. To outsiders, they said that those women had intentions that shouldn't exist. They wanted to use Imperial Consort Pang, so that Imperial Consort Pang would pay them back in their own coin. In other words, they deserved to die. The ministers in the court watched their beloved daughters die in Pang Yuan's hands, but they dared not say anything. First, they were afraid of Grand Tutor Pang's identity. What they did was undoubtedly seeking their own death. Second, Pang Yuan was tyrannical in the harem. She was so vicious that even the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were indifferent. If they dared to submit a memorial to Pang Yuan, I'm afraid it wouldn't be good for them. During this period, Shen Yueji had been listening quietly. She didn't open her mouth to interrupt or say a word. Shangguan always observed the expression on her face and did not miss a flash of light in her eyes. However, she still underestimated the woman in front of her. Until now, after so many things about Pang Yuan, Shen Yueji's expression did not change. It was as if she was listening to a stranger. If it was someone else who heard a stranger's behavior, they would interrupt and say something. However, Shen Yueji did not. Not only did she not, but she also did not have the slightest intention to interrupt. I heard that before Miss Shen came to the Dark North Kingdom, Imperial Consort Pang had joined forces with the people from the Dark Poison Cult to kill Miss Shen on the way. Even Mr. Fui and Ji Chu, the trusted guards and close friends of the Emperor, almost died with Miss Shen on the way. Is this true? If Imperial Consort Mei said that you didn't fight for anything in the harem, others might believe it, others would believe it, but I don't. The things that Pang Yuan did in private are only known by us. Even her biological father, who is the most powerful person in the court, knows about it. What else does he not know? Chapter 860. Once father makes a mistake, then regardless of whether it's the Empress Dowager, the Emperor, or even the Grand Preceptor, he has such a high position. Whether father is an official or a citizen, it's all up to him. How could Ben Gong dare to offend him? Since you don't dare to offend him, why are you telling me this? If I say that I feel like old friends with Miss Shen, I believe that Miss Shen will not believe me. Shen Yueji's lips curled up slightly. Not saying anything was better than expressing her stance. This was enough to prove to Shangguan Mei that she indeed would not believe her. The Emperor's love is rare. The love between a man and a woman in a normal family is only temporary. That's why it can reach this stage. With time, there will be a day when they get tired of it, let alone the Emperor's family. Miss Shen is so smart. I believe that you will understand even without me saying it in detail. Why don't you make other plans for the Emperor's love for you? Otherwise, when there's a time of danger in the future and the Emperor's love is gone, you won't be able to protect yourself. This time, Shen Yueji finally understood the meaning behind her words, and smiled slightly. Mei Fei, do you want me to use the Emperor? Shangguan Mei's expression did not show any panic or fear from being exposed. After all, instigating a concubine to be disloyal to the Emperor was a capital crime. Even if her father was a first-rank prime minister in the northern underworld, anyone who dared to have designs on the Emperor would only face death. Shangguan Mei did not feel that there was anything wrong with this at all. She only said, Miss Shen, I did not ask you to have designs on the Emperor. I am only advising you to make plans for your future. After all, you are from the Feng country. The northern underworld is thousands of miles away from the Feng country. Furthermore, your father is a first-rank general in the Feng country. He has great power in the court and is highly regarded by the Feng country's emperor. You were previously the Feng country's emperor's favorite concubine. For the emperor, you traveled thousands of miles to the northern underworld. Right now, I'm afraid your reputation in the Feng nation has already plummeted. An imperial concubine eloping with another man. Where does the face of the Feng nation's emperor go? There is indeed no place for me in the Feng country, but there is in the northern sea. Just like concubine Mei said, the emperor dotes on me and is willing to stay in the harem. Everything goes according to my wishes. Let's not talk about how long this will last. It could be as short as a few days or as long as a few years, but it is enough for me. Is Miss Shen so confident in herself? What else? Shen Yueji raised her eyebrows. Seeing her like this, for some reason, Shangguan Mei suddenly smiled. She laughed softly and stared at Shen Yueji for a while. When other women are favored, they all think of ways to make the emperor happy. They are deeply afraid that they will displease the emperor in any way, so that they won't lose this favor that they have worked so hard to obtain. They are also afraid that the emperor's favor will not last long, so they have long planned for themselves. These imperial concubines all have some background and status. Miss Shen, you just happened to come to the Northern Sea. This is not the Feng Nation. No matter what status you had in the Feng Nation, in the Northern Sea, you are not even comparable to the simplest farmer's daughter. First, domain name. Please remember first published on the new August 1st Chinese website, Miss Shen, you are just like that. You are not afraid that the emperor will dislike you and fall in love with someone else. I have said this to Mo Wushang long ago. Even Sheng Wanmei, who knew that Shen Yueji was favored, could not help but suck in a cold breath when she heard that Shen Yueji dared to call the emperor by his name. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yuda Literature on WeChat chatting about life and looking for a bosom friend. Chapter 861. Sometimes, even the Empress Dowager didn't dare to call the emperor's name so openly. However, this woman called him so skillfully. She had also called him like this in front of the emperor before. Was this woman's position in the emperor's heart that important? Even directly calling the emperor by his name, the emperor could still be so indulgent and not take it to heart. Huaxin Originals, domain names, please remember he did not miss the look of surprise that flashed across her face. Shen Yueji smiled. If there comes a day when Mo Wushang dislikes me, I will leave, and will not pester him. So, in the harem, those thoughts that imperial concubine Mei reminded me of, I disdain to do it, and I am also too lazy to do it. I'm afraid that imperial concubine Mei is using the wrong person to say these words to me. Mobile/M. Com/Shangwan Mei did not give up. Aren't you afraid? Shen Yueji looked at her. As you said, what should I be afraid of? She asked him so calmly. For a moment, Shangwan Mei did not know what to say. All the words that were at the tip of her tongue were stuck in her throat. Lady Shen, Bengong knows that the emperor likes you. Perhaps it is because of your calm character that the emperor likes you so much. Bengong also knows that you do not want to have any ideas about the emperor. It was Bengong who was rude just now. But Imperial Consort Pang, I'm just reminding you out of goodwill that you need to be on guard. Just the dark poison cult can be used by her, and there's also Onyx Soul. I believe I don't need to remind you, Miss Shen is such a smart person, you should know who is behind all this, right? Shangwan Mei was right. On the way to the Northern Underworld Kingdom, they had encountered that black shop. Shen Yueji knew that everything was controlled by Pang Yuan. Speaking of which, she was really surprised. What was Pang Yuan's identity and background? If it was just a small imperial concubine Pang of the Northern Underworld, how could she be involved with so many evil sects in Jianghu? Moreover, Pang Shen did not know about this matter at all. Pang Shen was a righteous and outspoken person. He disdained the slightest bit of contact with the evil sects in Jianghu. Why was it that when it came to Pang Yuan, she was the leader of the crooked path? She was in the harem and did not know any martial arts. Seeing that Shen Lian's line of sight fell on her, Shangwan Mei smiled. I wonder if Miss Shen is willing to cooperate with me. Hearing her question, Shen Yueji raised her eyebrows calmly. Cooperate with you? That's right. Shangwan Mei nodded. Bengong also really values Shen young lady's character. Everyone has seen Imperial Consort Pang's actions in the inner palace all these years. Most of them only dare to be angry with Pang Yuan but do not dare to say anything. If they want to get rid of her, it would undoubtedly be because of the disparity in her status in the Pang family. But now, Miss Shen, you have His Majesty's love and this Pang Yuan has secretly tried to take your life many times. Previously, she dared to be so open and aboveboard. Now that Miss Shen has entered Biming's harem, I don't know how many cruel methods she will think of to deal with you. Miss Shen is a smart person and a righteous person. What she is afraid of is the thoughts of vile people. Being able to guard against it once is a fluke, but it does not mean that you can guard against it the second time. The Emperor's favor is just a flash in the pan. If she uses tricks to make you lose favor, it will not be a good thing for you. For her, Miss Shen, you are a fish on an iron plate, and she can slaughter you as she pleases. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 862. Some trifling matters in the court. Whether it was him throwing a fit in the imperial study, or seeing the woman's sleeping smile when he came back, all the anger and dissatisfaction in his heart disappeared like smoke in thin air. Xinba Chinese net. I don't want to be the emperor anymore, okay? Shin Yueji didn't understand why he suddenly said this. She was still a little sleepy, but she couldn't help but open her eyes and look at him. Seeing the man's serious expression, even his eyes were full of love. I'll take you to travel around and see the great rivers and mountains outside. When you're tired, we'll find a beautiful place and settle down. Why not be the emperor? Right now, Dark North was inseparable from him. Because of the matter regarding the Southern Mountain envoy, Feng Jiuqing could only temporarily give up on attacking Dark North. However, Dark North had previously been beheaded and executed by so many rebellious officials. Mo Wushang needed a long time to pacify them, otherwise, the man's large hand caressed the girl's delicate white face. If I didn't meet you, I might be the emperor of the North Sea for the rest of my life. But after I met you, I only want to be with you. Who gets the country and who dies has nothing to do with me. The young and handsome emperor's eyes were full of love for her. In his dark eyes, there was only her. It was different from Feng Jiuqing. Shin Yueji once saw in Feng Jiuqing's eyes, apart from her, there was also the Feng nation. But Mo Wushang. In the depths of his pitch-black eyes, in the deepest part of his gaze, there was only one person, her. Mo Wushang, will you regret it? You chose me and gave up the throne. I'm really afraid that one day, I'm not as good as you think I am. You'll regret it. The man pinched her little face lovingly. As long as you don't leave me, I'll never regret it. You don't have a child. If you leave, who will inherit the throne? You can't let the North Sea fall into someone else's hands and change your surname in the future. She knew that it wasn't easy for the Empress Dowager to bring him up to this point. She didn't want to be so selfish and let her years of hard work go to waste because of her. She knew the man would not care, he thought, if she said a word, an answer. Give me a child. On the computer, what? The man intimately bit her ear. Will give birth to a child for me. I will pass the throne to him. The Empress Dowager will be in charge of the government. You and I will travel around. Shin Yueji, the man's words were somewhat irresponsible, although she felt quite comfortable listening to it. Mo Wushang, a newborn baby can't leave his mother. He doesn't know anything yet, so how can he go to court? And the Empress Dowager, she's already so old. She used to be in charge of politics from behind the curtains when she took care of you. She can't possibly do the same when she takes care of your son in the future. Besides, even if I'm really pregnant, I may not be able to give birth to a son. The man kissed her little mouth. If it's a son, he'll be named the Crown Prince. If it's a daughter, she'll be named the Princess. In short, the throne of the North Sea is theirs. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. Shin Yueji, Shengwanmei came by today. Shengwanmei. Faced with her sudden change of topic, the man also frowned. For a moment, he couldn't remember who this person was. He could only vaguely tell from the name that it was a woman. He looked at Shin Yueji and slowly had an impression of her. He knew that this woman's father was a first-grade prime minister in the court. If he wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 863. Sometimes, I really want to crack open your head and see what's in that little head of yours. When did I say anything about cooperating with her? But miss, if you don't want to work with her, you talked to her for so long. Does talking for so long mean you agreed to work with her? In the past, if you didn't like anyone, you would have asked me to chase them away. Why would you waste so much time with that woman? Seeing that Shin Yueji was about to hit her again, Shuangxi was so scared that she covered her head and jumped far away. Miss, stop hitting me. It hurts, the situation is different, so the people you face are different. Think about who Sheng Wanmei is. Miss Pang Yuan, you're not afraid, but Sheng Wanmei. Afraid? Shin Yueji suddenly laughed. To be honest, I'm not afraid. However, Sheng Wanmei's reputation in the palace is much better than Pang Yuan's. Moreover, she's the one who came to work with me. If I reject her, I'm afraid the people in the palace will be unhappy. Then, miss, are you planning to work with her or keep her in suspense? But there's one thing that Sheng Wanmei is right. I don't know where Pang Yuan got her ability to make friends with so many evil people in the pugilistic world. Even Pang Shin doesn't know about this. What if you want me to work with Sheng Wanmei? Mobile phone /m. com/new August 1st Chinese website. Let's not talk about Sheng Wanmei and's intentions. At least, it's true that she wants to get rid of Pang Yuan. Moreover, if you work with her, then for a period of time in the future, Sheng Wanmei will be on your side. I can't be sure in the future, but at least for now, you're allies on the same front. Actually, Shin Yueji had thought about what Shuangxi said, but she frowned. Just from the conversation just now, it's hard to see that this woman is very scheming. I don't want to have much contact with such a person. That's true. Shuangxi nodded cooperatively. Miss, you have the son-in-law. No matter how powerful Pang Yuan is, how can she be more powerful than the son-in-law? Hearing this, Shin Yueji did not refute. Thinking of the man's handsome face, a faint smile hung on her lips. Perhaps it was right for her to boldly take this step. Because Mo Wushang was truly her lover. Mo Wushang returned very late this time, perhaps because he had matters to attend to in the imperial court. As for Shin Yueji, the man had not returned from the imperial study, so she had been waiting for him in Jingyang Palace. She had been waiting for him until she fell asleep. Shuangxi had also tried to persuade her several times, but she had rejected him. Seeing that Shuangxi was sleepy, she asked her to go back to sleep first. Shuangxi tried to persuade her several times, but to no avail. He could only respectfully accept the order and retreat. During this period, Wan Qing had also come to see her a few times. Because she was injured, Shin Yueji told her to recuperate from her injuries first and not to worry about her. Sleepiness hit her. She crawled on the coffee table and took a nap for a while. Unexpectedly, she really fell asleep. When she woke up again, it was not the cold table under her body, but the warm embrace of a man. Shin Yueji looked up and saw Mo Wushang's handsome face. She couldn't help but be startled. After a long time, she said, "You're back." Mo Wushang gently touched her pretty nose. "Since you're sleepy, why don't you go to sleep first? I want to wait for you to come back." Shin Yueji smiled and rested her head on the man's arm again. "What kept you busy for so long? If you want to talk about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, follow you read literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a bosom friend." Chapter 864. I don't care about Pang Yuan. Moreover, I can deal with her. You don't need to help me. It's easy to abolish her. I only have evidence against her if she does something wrong. If you abolish her, not only will Grand Tutor Pang not say anything, even the ministers in the court will shut their mouths. The only person I'm guarding against now is Sheng Wanmei. Because I found that Sheng Wanmei is more scheming and shrewd than Pang Yuan. It's not scary to kill someone fiercely. What's scary is that this woman comes to kill you with a smile. It's hard to guard against a gentle and kind smile. Mo Wushang saw that she didn't want him to interfere in her affairs, so he didn't ask anymore. Instead, he tapped the tip of her nose and smiled softly. General Shin sent a letter. Father sent a letter. Shin Yueji's eyes lit up. She immediately got up from the man's arms. Where's the letter? Let me see it. I'll get it for you. Mo Wushang's dark eyes flashed. He got up and went out of the inner hall. Shin Yueji tidied up her clothes on the bed. When she was almost done, she quickly dressed up and followed him out. The man was sitting on the dragon desk with a letter in his hand. When he saw her come out, he handed the letter to her. Shin Yueji looked at the letter that hadn't been opened yet. She was stunned. Didn't you read it? A trace of awkwardness flashed across the man's handsome face. This is written by General Shin for you. For some reason, Shin Yueji felt it was funny to see the man's expression. She sat on his lap. So what if it's written for me? But the addressee is you. What kind of relationship do we have? What's wrong with taking a look? She opened the letter and glanced at the contents. When the man leaned over, she quickly folded the letter and didn't let him read it. The corner of her mouth twitched for a long time. She straightened the man's handsome face. I think it's right that you don't read it. After all, we shouldn't wash our dirty linen in public. She thought that Shin He would write to her at this time about Feng country. For example, she was worried that they would be implicated by Feng Juqing because of her. Let's not talk about these things first. The content of the letter wasn't mentioned at all. The fastest update on the internet mobile/m. com/the general content was about how Shin Yueji abused them in a perverted manner when she was not in the Feng kingdom, how she was not filial to them, and how they cursed her to be struck by lightning. On the computer, on the other hand, there were those who missed her filial piety and said that she had been filial to them all these years. However, after she left, Shin Yueji, the man looked at the envelope curiously. What's written on it? It's just some family gossip. It's fine if you don't read it. Shin Yueji smiled bitterly. She thought that Shin He had settled some matters in Feng Nation and was planning to come over to arrange some itineraries. Who knew that a letter with a few hundred words was all about Shin Yueji? He didn't know what Shin Yueji did to make them so angry. However, on second thought, Shin Yueji guessed that Shin Yueji probably didn't do anything. Shen He and Shin Qiu probably missed her too much after she left, so no matter how they looked at her, they didn't like her, so, say, Shin Yueji and Shin Yueji are both children of old General Shin and Mrs. Shin. Why is there such a huge difference in treatment? The man laughed. Maybe General Shin is different from others. If you want to talk about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, follow You Read Literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 865. He had personally experienced Shin He's uniqueness when he stayed in the Shin Mansion for a few days. It's the annual Lantern Festival in the North Sea in 5 days. Do you want to go? Out of the palace? Yes. Shin Yueji originally had some expectations in her heart, but on second thought, Mo Wushang still had a lot of matters to deal with in court, and it was rare for him to have some free time. She still wanted this man to rest more, and not continue to take her to see the lanterns. It's just the Lantern Festival. There's plenty of time next year. If you're free, take a good rest. I'm not tired. He held Shin Yueji in his arms and smelled her unique fragrance. He closed his eyes in satisfaction. As long as you're by my side, I don't feel tired. The palace is a cage. I know you're not familiar with anything here, and there's no one you can make friends with here. Every time he finished his work, he just wanted to spend more time with her. He didn't want her to feel helpless in the palace alone. They're all people with ulterior motives. But that Wu Jiaoyi from the day before yesterday is not bad. Before you came back last night, she asked her maid to send me a box of her family's specialty. Do you want to try it? It was her family's jujube, and it tasted quite sweet. Wu Jiaoyi. The man kissed her cheek. He seemed to have some impression of this person. He had never heard Wu Jiaoyi praise another woman. This Wu Jiaoyi must have something special about her to be able to catch her attention. The one in the Imperial Garden last time, have you forgotten? Calm. Yes, I don't want to remember any other woman except you. Shin Yueji was speechless. Do you think I should reply to my father and the others? Ask them when they plan to come to the North Sea. Wasn't it too obvious? If the letter was intercepted by someone and reached Feng Jiuqing, Shin Yueji suddenly thought of something when she mentioned Feng Jiuqing. Feng Jiuqing was seriously injured. I don't know how he is now. Have you received any news from the Feng country? Feng Jiuqing from Shin Yueji's mouth is like a taboo. The man's deep eyes flashed, looking at her. As smart as she was, how could she not know what the man was thinking? Mo Wushang, I don't have any feelings for him now. I just think that if he is seriously injured, father and the rest will not be able to leave. If they leave and other countries find out that the Feng nation's emperor is seriously injured and unconscious, they will definitely move against the Feng nation. In this way, the ones who will suffer will be the innocent citizens. As a loyal subject of the Feng kingdom, father will definitely not let those innocent people be put in dire straits. Shen He was a very open-minded person when it came to certain things, but when it came to loyalty, he was stubborn. His Shen family had always protected not the emperor but the common people. Only if Feng Jiuqing woke up and was able to take charge of the court would he feel at ease coming to the northern underworld. As long as Feng Jiuqing did not wake up, she believed that Shen He would not come. The fastest network update mobile/m. There is indeed some news from the Feng nation, but it's, he paused and looked at Shin Yueji. It's about you. About me. 3 days ago, Feng Jiuqing woke up, but when he heard that you came to the northern underworld, he vomited blood and fainted again. Shin Yueji was speechless. Shouldn't she admire herself for being able to make Feng Jiuqing vomit blood? If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 866. I don't care about Pang Yuan. Moreover, I can deal with her. You don't need to help me. It's easy to abolish her. I only have evidence against her if she does something wrong. If you abolish her, not only will Grand Tutor Pang not say anything, even the ministers in the court will shut their mouths. The only person I'm guarding against now is Sheng Wanmei. Because I found that Sheng Wanmei is more scheming and shrewd than Pang Yuan. It's not scary to kill someone fiercely. What's scary is that this woman comes to kill you with a smile. It's hard to guard against a gentle and kind smile. Mo Wushang saw that she didn't want him to interfere in her affairs, so he didn't ask anymore. Instead, he tapped the tip of her nose and smiled softly. General Shin sent a letter. Father sent a letter. Shin Yueji's eyes lit up. She immediately got up from the man's arms. Where's the letter? Let me see it. I'll get it for you. Mo Wushang's dark eyes flashed. He got up and went out of the inner hall. Shin Yueji tidied up her clothes on the bed. When she was almost done, she quickly dressed up and followed him out. The man was sitting on the dragon desk with a letter in his hand. When he saw her come out, he handed the letter to her. Shin Yueji looked at the letter that hadn't been opened yet. She was stunned. Didn't you read it? A trace of awkwardness flashed across the man's handsome face. This is written by General Shin for you. For some reason, Shin Yueji felt it was funny to see the man's expression. She sat on his lap. So what if it's written for me? But the addressee is you. What kind of relationship do we have? What's wrong with taking a look? She opened the letter and glanced at the contents. When the man leaned over, she quickly folded the letter and didn't let him read it. The corner of her mouth twitched for a long time. She straightened the man's handsome face. I think it's right that you don't read it. After all, we shouldn't wash our dirty linen in public. She thought that Shin-hee would write to her at this time about Feng country. For example, she was worried that they would be implicated by Feng Jiuqing because of her. Let's not talk about these things first. The content of the letter wasn't mentioned at all. The fastest update on the internet mobile/m. com/the general content was about how Shin Yueji abused them in a perverted manner when she was not in the Feng kingdom, how she was not filial to them, and how they cursed her to be struck by lightning. On the computer, on the other hand, there were those who missed her filial piety and said that she had been filial to them all these years. However, after she left, Shin Yueji, the man looked at the envelope curiously. What's written on it? It's just some family gossip. It's fine if you don't read it. Shin Yueji smiled bitterly. She thought that Shin-hee had settled some matters in Feng Nation and was planning to come over to arrange some itineraries. Who knew that a letter with a few hundred words was all about Shin Yueji? He didn't know what Shin Yueji did to make them so angry. However, on second thought, Shin Yueji guessed that Shin Yueji probably didn't do anything. Shin-hee and Shin Chio probably missed her too much after she left, so no matter how they looked at her, they didn't like her, so, say, Shin Yueji and Shin Yueji are both children of old General Shin and Mrs. Shin. Why is there such a huge difference in treatment? The man laughed. Maybe General Shin is different from others. If you want to talk about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble with more like-minded people, follow You Read Literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find bosom friends. Chapter 867. She rolled her eyes at her and said, "You silly girl." She chuckled. After the joy, she became gloomy again. Miss, did the general and his wife send a letter? www.com. Coming. After washing up, Shin Yueji sat on the round chair beside the tea table and was about to eat. Hearing Double Happiness's muffled voice, she looked at her and said without hesitation, "Coming." Why didn't Miss tell the servant? It was only yesterday when this servant and Ji Chu were chatting that he told this servant. Shin Yueji laughed and said, "What's there to tell? Didn't I tell you? Father and mother will come sooner or later. Besides, the walls have ears. It's better to let less people know about this. What if the other women in the North Underworld's harem find out? Especially Pang Yuan." She suspected that Pang Yuan must have someone in Feng country. Otherwise, she wouldn't know everything that happened in Feng country. If she knew that Shin-hee wanted to go to North Underworld, what happened in Ci and Palace didn't count. Her words alone weren't enough to win people's trust. If she knew that Shinhee wanted to go to North Underworld now, she was afraid that she was conspiring with Feng Juqing behind his back. Double Happiness was excited and said, "Miss, did the general say when he will come?" "I don't know about that." Shin Yueji shook her head and said, "I heard from your son-in-law that Feng Juqing was originally awake. After knowing that I eloped with another man, he vomited blood and fainted. It's been so long, he should have woken up by now." Ah, Double Happiness covered her mouth in shock and said, "His Majesty vomited blood because of you?" Shin Yueji rolled her eyes and said, "How do you know he did it for me? Wasn't it because I eloped with another man and caused him, the emperor of a country, to lose all his face?" "That's true. But how did the general deal with this?" "While he was in the northern underworld, he didn't hear anything from the Feng Kingdom. Even the general and the others were safe and sound. Originals, domain names, please remember, no matter what, father is still a first-rank official in the imperial court. Many officials in the imperial court are attached to him. Even those officials who were once on bad terms with him don't dare to add oil to the fire because of His Majesty's serious injuries. The imperial court is in need of manpower. They will only protect father and not do anything to father. Right now, I just want father to come to the northern underworld as soon as possible. I have a feeling that if they continue to stay in the Feng Nation, something will definitely happen." Shuangxi nodded. "Since the general and Furen have already promised young miss to serve son-in-law, then the general and Furen will definitely come. It's just a matter of time." She knew that the young miss's worries were not about the general and his wife's safety. "Don't worry, Mississippi." Chapter 868. After all, in her eyes, Feng Juqing was a man who lived a carefree life. Other than his empire, he really did not care about anything else. He did not care about anything else, including the relationship between a man and a woman. In his eyes, it was not worth mentioning at all. Even when he said that he liked her and wanted her to be his empress, in fact, in his eyes, once she posed any threat to his throne or the country, he would abandon her without the slightest hesitation. She did not believe that he really loved her. If he really liked her, perhaps he liked her a little, but this love could not withstand scheming and interests. The fastest update on the net mobile/m. com/to be honest, when Feng Juqing found out that she eloped with another man, and that man was Mo Wushang, was he angry that she betrayed him, or angry that he lost to Mo Wushang and was unwilling? Forget it. She thought seriously for a while. I have to reply to my parents first, so that they can make plans to come to the North Underworld as soon as possible. Mo Wushang looked at her with a smile. He described you as worse than your brother. Men were rarely so humorous. When he said this, Shin Yueji could not help but look at him a few more times. However, she agreed with what he said. She nodded, "Yes, only if I describe myself as worse than my brother, my parents will come early." The main thing was that she was afraid that, before Feng Juqing had time to suspect Shinhee, she had to persuade them to come as soon as possible. Feng Juqing was not a fool. She had been deceived by him at that time. Over the past 9 years, she had come to understand him well. At the very least, she had a good grasp of his temperament and thoughts. Feng Juqing could not find out now, but it did not mean that he would not find out in the future. If she did not get Shinhee and Shinqiu to the North Underworld, she was afraid that if Feng Juqing found out something, then, after thinking for a while, she took out a piece of paper, spread it out in front of her, and considered a few words that she was not afraid of being cut off by others. After sitting on the man's lap and writing for a while, Shin Yueji turned her body to let the man see. "What do you think about replying to them like this?" Mo Wushang glanced at it and took the brush from her hand. He added a few more words before nodding his head in satisfaction. "It's done." Shin Yueji could only see some outlines. It mentioned Pang Yuan and Sheng Wan Mei, but when she looked at it, the man folded the paper, put it in the envelope, and ordered Ji Chu to deliver the letter. What did you write? Shin Yueji turned to look at him curiously. The man pinched her little nose lovingly. Something that can make old General Shin rush over as soon as possible. Shin Yueji. 3 days later, Mo Wushang didn't even have breakfast and went to the imperial study early to deal with official business. Before he left, he did not forget to instruct Shuangxi to wake up and eat breakfast. Shin Yueji didn't stay in bed for long before Double Happiness pulled her out of bed. She angrily threw it at her. Is it because I've been indulging you these days that you don't even put me in your eyes? He had even forgotten the most basic difference between master and servant. First published on the new August Chinese website, she thought that after saying this, Double Happiness would be more or less well-behaved. Who knew that she would come forward to put on her clothes with a disapproving look? Miss, now who is serving who? Hurry up and wash up and eat. It's not good to stay in bed. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, talk about life, find a bosom friend. The general and madam are protected by secret guards, so there won't be any danger. Also, the eldest young master, although he is usually unreliable, he is also an extremely intelligent person. Miss, you don't have to be afraid. There's always a chance. I'm just worried. Hopefully, my worries are unnecessary. Shin Yueji sighed. Originally, she thought that after her rebirth, she would have no one to worry about. However, the Shin couple treated her sincerely, so the only people she was worried about now were them. Miss Shin, Nanny Zhu requests to see you. At this moment, Wan Qing came in from outside and said respectfully. Nanny Zhu. Shin Yueji didn't expect her to come back at this time. Thinking that she was the Empress Dowager's servant, she said, invite her in. Yes. If you want to talk about explosively cute concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yue Literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a bosom friend. Chapter 870. Miss, why did Nanny Zhu come to Xingyang Palace at this time? Hearing that Nanny Zhu wanted to see Shuangxi was stunned. She probably didn't expect Empress Dowager's nanny to come here. Or did Empress Dowager want to see her miss? Nanny Zhu must come to Xingyang Palace because of Empress Dowager. I'll ask her when she comes in. Oh. Shuangxi shut her mouth and said no more. In fact, Shuangxi liked Nanny Zhu very much. Besides, Nanny Zhu had said those heartfelt words to her before. How could an ordinary person say those words to her? Miss Shin. After Nanny Zhu came in, she bowed to Shin Yueji and said respectfully, without any sense of dominance. Shin Yueji saw her and smiled. Nanny Zhu, why do you come to see me at this time? Oh, Empress Dowager asked me to invite Miss Shin to have a meal. A meal? Shin Yueji looked at the table full of delicacies that had yet to be touched and hesitated. As the saying goes, she didn't want to waste food. Miss Shin hasn't even touched her chopsticks yet. Take them away and let those servants eat. After all, it was a great honor to be rewarded by the master. Okay. Empress Dowager gave her a jade rui not long ago. She wouldn't go if Empress Dowager didn't invite her. But if she did, she had to respect Empress Dowager. Shuangxi. Mississippi, dress me up and come with me to Ci and Palace to see Empress Dowager. Yes. Shuangxi didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly followed Shin Yueji into the palace to dress her up. After about 15 minutes, she looked at Mrs. Makeup and hesitated. Miss, why did Empress Dowager ask you to have a meal? This. First published on the August 1st Chinese website. Calm. Calm, what are you worried about? Empress Dowager is a good person. She won't be like Pang Yuan. Maybe she wants to know me better. Oh. She walked out of the hall and was led by Nanny Zhu. Soon, they arrived at Xi'an Palace. In Xi'an Palace, Empress Dowager Xi'an had been waiting for her for a while. The delicious food on the table hadn't been eaten yet. The dishes were covered to prevent the food from getting cold. The moment he saw her, Xi'an's eyes moved. Shen Yueji was about to bow. There's no need. We'll be a family in the future. There's no need for you to perform these complicated rituals on me. Just do whatever His Majesty wants you to do. Yes, Empress Dowager. Xi'an looked at her and faintly smiled. Quickly sit beside me. Yes. I heard that Shuangxi grew up with you. You two are as close as sisters. When you're together, there aren't many rules. Since that's the case, let's sit together. Originals, domain names, please remember the one who was surprised was not Shen Yueji, but Shuangxi. She opened her mouth in shock and looked at the Empress Dowager, not knowing what to do, and then looked at Shen Yueji. After all, she was just a servant. How could she sit in front of her master? Miss Double Happiness, feel free to sit. This servant is the same as the Empress Dowager. I've been by the Empress Dowager's side for so many years. I've long since sat at the same table as the Empress Dowager. Nanny Zhu had already sat down. Shuangxi couldn't say anything more. Under Shen Yueji's nod, she also sat down. However, opposite her was the Empress Dowager of the North Underworld. Although she sat down as the Empress Dowager said, she was still a little nervous. Looking at Xi'an's friendly and approachable appearance, Shen Yueji didn't know him very well. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, WeChat, talk about life and find a bosom friend. Chapter 871. But today, it was too unimaginable. It was unimaginable to the point that it caused her to be on guard. This fish ball was Aijia's favorite dish when I was young. It was very troublesome to make. When the late emperor was alive, he often got angry at the servants in the imperial kitchen because of this dish. Just because they didn't make enough food, and she couldn't eat to her heart's content every time. I heard from the people in the palace that the late emperor dispersed the 3,000 beauties in the harem for the Empress Dowager, and only favored the Empress Dowager. Xi'an smiled when he heard this, and his voice was full of nostalgia. It's all spread by the people in the harem, alas. If it wasn't true, who would dare to spread the news in the palace, especially about the emperor and the empress, unless they didn't want to keep their heads? Seeing you and Shang are so loving, Aijia seems to see myself and the late emperor when they were young. It's really worth remembering. Aijia can see that Shang likes you very much. He cares more about you than when the late emperor doted on Aijia. Shen Yueji didn't speak. Aijia only has this one son. In addition, the northern underworld only has this one emperor. It wasn't easy for Aijia to raise him. The bitterness of it is not something that Aijia can describe with a few words. While speaking, Xi'an picked up another piece of meat and put it in her bowl. Shang doesn't like to smile since he was a child. This has something to do with the place he grew up in. Every day, he is deeply involved in the struggle of deception and deception. He knows the mission he carries. Aijia also feels distressed to see him like this, but Aijia can't help it. He is the emperor of the northern underworld, the only son of the late emperor. It wasn't until I met you that I felt a sense of humanity from him. Other than that woman, you were the second woman who made him feel like a normal person. In fact, Shin Yueji didn't need to think carefully to know who the woman she was talking about was. It was undoubtedly not the eldest daughter of the Gu family, Gu Yueqin, but herself. Aijia hopes that he can be a good emperor for the northern underworld and for the innocent people of the northern underworld. But Aijia hopes that he can be a normal person, have 7 emotions and 6 desires, and spend his life with the woman he likes. He is willing to believe in you. I am also willing to believe in you. Don't disappoint me, okay? Empress Dowager, since I have chosen to follow His Majesty, I will be loyal to him for the rest of my life. Empress Dowager can rest assured. From the moment she chose to follow Mo Wushang, it didn't matter if he was the emperor or not. She only wanted to be with the man she liked. The fastest network update mobile/m. Com/the Empress Dowager smiled mysteriously. I don't want to think about how you were in the Feng Nation before, nor do I want to bother about it. However, now that you're here in the Northern Underworld, I only have one thing to tell you. The Northern Underworld's harem cannot be compared to your Feng Nation's harem. The harem is a huge divat. Any woman who enters the harem, no matter how naive they used to be, will eventually become vicious. Humans are born selfish. Everything they do is for themselves. When I was young, I also made many close friends. I thought we could be good sisters forever, but in the end, it was all for ourselves. Will remember Empress Dowager's reminder. Moreover, Shin Yueji didn't plan to make many friends. Lu Qingru was once her best friend, and she gave up everything for her. The fastest network update computer, I want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble. Chat about life, find a bosom friend.